Welcome to Global Citizen Life podcast. Today on the show, we have Angela. Angela, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, your journey so far has been a little bit interesting. So, you were born in the United States, spent quite a bit of time as a child within Spain on holidays, schooling, things like
Mhm.
that. Then went back or kind of moved back to the States full time for several years. And then now you have relocated permanently, or at least for the next unknown amount of time, back into Spain.
Absolutely. Yes, you've got it right.
So why did you leave the US to move back to Spain?
Quality of life. I mean, if you're going to ask me to summarize it in one word, it's quality of life. It's the fact that, and we're going to run into a bunch of cliches, right? Here, people work to live, they don't live to work. I was contemplating motherhood at that time. And the reality was that I wanted to be able to be a present mother. I wanted my son, well, my child at that point, now my son, to go to a school where I felt safe leaving him, where I wasn't going to have to worry about gun violence, where there was still an innocence, quote unquote, to society.
Yes.
And yeah, those were some of the motivating factors. Like I often say, like, I'm a person that's done change of life things, right? Where you're like, I'm reinventing my life. There's this book called Composing a Life where the author talks about how a woman's life is like a symphony. You have different movements, and I decided it was time for a different movement.
Perfect. So then, out of all of the beautiful places in Spain and different types of weather and everything, because I think a lot of people may not realize that Spain has all different types of weather. There's part of the country gets quite a bit more rain. If you're up by the mountains, definitely snow and cold. Tons of coast. That's what everybody thinks: sunshine and beach. And but down to the south and inland gets extremely hot in the summertime. So you chose Galicia, and why did you choose that region?
So we'll start with the fact that, like, I was living in Texas and I was
Okay.
done with the Texas heat. That's a big factor, right? But the biggest factor is
Yeah.
actually I grew up in Galicia. I have family here. I have roots. I love the fact that you have the ocean and the mountains within walking distance of each other. I love the fact that you have four seasons. It kind of sucks that it rains a lot, but I often justify it to myself saying, well, Uncle, if it didn't rain this much, probably wouldn't be so beautiful and green.
Sure. That definitely is true. Everything, there's two sides to everything.
Hmm.
Absolutely. So, what have you found maybe have been some of the challenges about living in Spain, whether there's Spain in general or specific to your region?
Well, I think challenges that arise is like things are much slower here. When you come from a US environment and you expect you're used to things happening like this, things don't happen like that. You have to adjust your mindset. You have to get used to the fact that there's a pace of life and people really respect that pace of life, be it by honoring your lunchtime hour, be it by people tell you, oh, it's Friday afternoon. I'm probably not going to look at that until Monday or Tuesday. And you like those are things that you have to adjust to. I mean, bureaucracy is a heavy burden in Spain. That's something to also keep in mind. Um, with that, so for me, those would probably be,
Mm,
the non-perks of living here.
right. And I find, the pace of life is very interesting because I talk to so many people, and when in North America in general, when people are looking to move, they all say, I want a slower pace of life. I want to slow down. However, when they do move, then it is challenge. Even
Hmm.
though they want it, they really kind of struggle with adjusting to it. And I get it because it's our whole life for the last 20 years or however long it's been that we've lived in North America, and we're used to that go, 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 things get done now. I need whatever fixed. It's going to be done today, tomorrow, or fairly quickly, depending upon what it is. And they want the slower pace of life because they enjoy it when they're on vacation for a week or 2 weeks, but then struggle a little bit with the long term for the next 6 months, year, maybe, depending, everybody's a little bit different until they really kind of then get used to it. There's always still that odd time where it bothers them. And it's just a very interesting that it's something that we all say that we want. And I do believe like we mean it, we do want it, but it is a struggle to adjust to it.
I think part of it is that like we want it for ourselves, but there's a convenience in having everything immediately. So we're used to that like instant satisfaction, instant gratification. I want this, I do this now. I mean, Amazon Prime today or whatever it is now in the United States, like you're used to getting stuff then and there, and like it just doesn't happen that way. Here, there are days where everything is closed. In the United States, you might say everything's closed on Thanksgiving, sometimes, because with Black Friday, who knows? Or like,
Mhm.
and certain holidays, maybe New Year's Day, but even then, there are exceptions. So I
Right.
think that I agree with you. Like it's a process.
Mhm.
But that's also the process of integrating and acculturating somewhere.
Right. One of the things that I've integrated quite well with is the 2-hour lunch. I
Hmm.
really enjoy going and having menu of the day and having lunch as it basically is the biggest meal that I eat, because for people who are watching or listening, it's an appetizer, an entree, you get something to drink, whether it's a beer, wine, water, whatever that beverage is, and then you can have dessert or tea or coffee. And so it's a three-course meal generally, and I love that, and it's usually around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, where I have and I love that part. I've integrated well to that because it's casual, but the struggle with that being one that I enjoy is the dinner time. The 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night dinners. And I say dinner, but granted that as well is dinners are very light. So when I
Yeah.
do meet friends later, it is sharing some tapas, having some
Mhm.
wine. So for people to know, it's not like North America where it's the biggest meal of your day and you're eating super heavy. Like that's not how they do it in Spain. But just that I do struggle with that time of eating.
I like now that I have a little one, it's a bit harder. But going with what you're saying about like the multi-course meals, it's very funny because my son, sometimes we're gonna have lunch and I'm just gonna give him like lunch. And he's like, sopita. He wants his
Oh,
first course because he eats at school. So at school, they also have multiple course meals for children. So he's used to that. So then I'm like,
right.
okay, let me go look for your sopita.
Well, it's and that obviously, and I mean, I've been out of the school system. My daughter's 26 now, so I've been out of the school system in North America for a long time. But it's also interesting that the school does the same as lunch is the course meal. Like that is tradition. That's a
Yeah.
standard. That's the culture, and that's the way it is. So for people again who are watching or listening, if you have kids, they get used to it. You might
And
have to
food,
get prepared to do it at home.
exactly. So like food's a ritual. So I'm a member of the PTA, right? And they're like, they need volunteers to go and quality control the food that's provided. So like they want people to volunteer to go eat once a month to make sure the food is warm,
Right.
that the quantity is sufficient. And the warm food thing is kind of funny too, because if I give my son something and it gets cold, he's like, it's cold. And I'm
Right.
like,
It's
what's
funny.
cold? He's like, it's cold. I'm like, do you want me to make it hotter? Tea. I'm like, okay, fine. Off we go to warm it up in the micro because it's part of the culture, right? Like the
Right.
it is a ritual.
Right.
You
Mhm.
don't rush through it. Like if you sit in a restaurant and you can be talking la haciendo sobremesa for like 3 hours and no one's gonna kick you out.
Right. Which is very unusual because it just popped into my head, a restaurant that I really love in Canada. And they cook everything in front of you and it's really nice, but it's basically you are in and out in an hour.
Yeah.
Like there's no because then they have the next group coming in and then it's so it's not. when I first told people, oh yeah, lunch for 2 hours, they're no, that's crazy. I said, no, it's like you socialize, you chat, you eat, you enjoy. It's not eat as quickly as you can and then get back to work. Eating at your desk in your office is not what is done in Spain.
Not at all. I mean, not at all. I mean, and people go out for coffee in the morning. They have their
Mhm.
early morning coffee, they have their mid-morning coffee, they go, and but that's also the social aspect. That's why people are so more immersed in the people around them. And for
Mm.
me, that was another thing that was very important for me to be somewhere where you are who you are and not what you do. Like,
Oh, yes.
you know what I mean? So when I moved back, nobody knew what I had done in the United States. Nobody had any idea of who I was in the United States, and nobody really cares.
Mm.
I'm just me. And with that, just me, you can have friends that have known each other forever. They've been lifelong friends, and one of them stopped at high school and started working at a shop, and the other one went out on to college and became an attorney, and there's still that connection.
Mm.
Like in that sense, things aren't as stratified. And that was important to me because it speaks a lot to my values.
Hmm. Well, I mean, who cares? Like, who cares what you do? Like, I don't
Hmm.
understand people who you you do whatever, right? Like, it's great that you're doing your job. I hope you're good at your job and you like your job.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean you're a good person. Doesn't mean you're a
Hmm.
nice person. Doesn't mean we have things in common. I
Or
mean,
you're interesting, like
or you're
like
interesting, yeah. And
exactly.
and I find that too, like it's so things really I find in North America are really so divided that you have to agree with me on everything or I don't like you, which
Hmm.
to me is absurd because we can find something in common with almost every other human being. No matter what. It might take a bit of chatting and a bit of digging, but we'll agree on some things and we'll have
Hmm.
some things in common. And hopefully we do disagree on some things because I think anybody who agrees with everything that somebody else says or does, something's not right. They're just agreeing for agreeing because then
They're
you
not
don't know what
authentic.
you know and like and desire and believe if you're just agreeing. And some of my best, like one of my best friends, we are we're quite different when it comes to politics. And
Hmm.
we have conversations on politics regularly because she'll say, oh, the government, blah, 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 this. And I'm like, well, that's good because this. And she's like, no, but, and then sometimes we always get to a point that says, well, no, I thought this is what was said, which means whatever.
Hmm.
And I would say, no, I'm pretty sure this is what was said, which means, or I believe the interpretation. And we both at points will say, we need to go back and look at that a little bit
Yeah.
and we can table it or sometimes we just say you know what we're just going to agree to disagree because our beliefs are different on that but we have so much other stuff that's still in common that we're
Mhm.
still friends and I just use the politics as an example because people seem to be so divided on politics and um there's I think I can agree with points that both sides of political parties make. I'm not just all one side, everything they
Mhm.
say, or all the opposite, because I'd be like, that's actually a good point. That's right. And then to the opposite political campaign, be like, oh, you know what? I do agree with that. I like that. And whether it's politics, religion, dressing, makeup, lifestyle, like
Mhm.
we need that diversity and we need to be respectful of it.
I believe that that there's magic and nuance, right? Like
Mm,
nuance is where you get to know people.
right.
I, like you, have a friend who is politically as far in the opposite direction as I am. And he recently came to meet my son. And before he came, I told him, yo, just so you know, we don't talk politics here. I love you, but we're not going to talk politics. Like there are topics that are off limits because we're not going to agree.
Right.
And and when and like we're both very far entrenched based on our lived experience. It has a lot to do with lived experience, right? So like we can
Right.
share nuance,
Mhm.
and sometimes he'll talk around things, and I'll listen to him, and I'm like, "You're so smart," and I still don't know why you believe this, but whatever. Um, but we agree that there are topics that we don't touch. Like this is the topic, these are topics that we're not talking about.
Mm,
And we enjoy each other in spite of that, right? Like I think that that's the important thing. I think that where it becomes a slippery slope is when the nuance leads itself, or prejudice covers itself up as nuance. And
mm,
or do you see what I'm saying? Like prejudice
yeah.
covers itself up as nuance, and disrespect covers itself up as nuance. That's when I'm no longer able to enter into that dialogue,
Hmm.
because for me, it's not productive.
It's not. It's not, and it's having to be really open. And I find, that's where all the travel that I've done and the living in different places has really opened myself up, that I will question, why do I believe this? Why do I think this? And sometimes
Hmm.
I'll say to myself, it's like, I don't know, it's something I should look into, because I've had conversations with people, different perspectives. And I've learned that the only reason why I have my opinion and belief is because of how I was raised, what I was read, what my parents told me, what I learned at school, my friends. And so when we move, yes, I still have my beliefs, and I've lived in 5 countries now, that it's great to have those. And if somebody asks me why, I can say, well, because, and I can explain. But I also know that when I'm moving to a different country, or even just on vacation, that when things are done, and the things as simple as when is lunch, siesta time in the afternoon, slowing things down, that I have to be like, okay, I've made the choice to come here, whether it's again vacation, and especially living, I need to integrate into this lifestyle. When it is a lunch that is this long, the slower pace, be open to the different religions if it's not
Hmm.
one that I practice, or I'm not religious, whatever those things are, because we've made the choice to go there to see, and be open to that, because we're the one that wants the change. And it's great because every place um, has beautiful things to see, the history, opinions of things, lifestyle, and the integration, I think, is really important for people who want to move to be part of, again, the community, which then you
Hmm.
have to be open to integrate, to be part of the community, and not just be in the group of expats who live on their own in whatever area town and only do expat things.
Absolutely. I think that we learn about ourselves as we see ourselves as reflections in other people. If we have the ability to evaluate and to think critically about ourselves without it feeling like it wounds our ego. So that, Live Galicia is this platform that I started in 2017, which it started out as an online community on Facebook, a group that connects people that are interested, either it's foreigners, expats, returning immigrants that have spent a long time living outside of their country, because that's when you
Mhm.
feel like you belong, but you don't belong, that we're looking for
Right.
community, right? And for us, our goal has always been to help acculturate and integrate, to help teach people how to navigate the culture, help people understand the nuance of living somewhere else.
Mm.
Because there's this therapist, she's a psychologist, her name is Deborah Tannen. And it kind of goes back to what you were saying, right? She talks about relationships in general. She talks about family relationships, and she says, and every time that, for instance, mothers and daughters have conversations, they come with the baggage of every conversation they ever had before that conversation. And when we encounter different cultures, we come with the baggage of everything that what you were saying, like for the wealth and like the detractors of who we are, both in terms of context, in terms of our personal experience, in terms of personalities, and it's about providing people a safe space to explore the other. So that's kind of what we've tried to do with Live Galicia, is for it to, it's grown organically from 3 people, my mother, a friend of mine, and me, to over 4,000, almost 4,000 people. And then we've started another group that goes with it that is specifically for entrepreneurs and individuals that are interested in exploring starting a business in Galicia, because, you know, in Spain, each regional autonomous community has very specific nuance, again, nuance, that's the word of the day, to the way, to the environment in which businesses operate. So kind of helping individuals understand what potential is there for business in Galicia? What's the best way to connect with the local community? Because in that sense, we also act as a bridge of sorts. Like we connect them with, we seek out the English speaking resources. And all the work that we do, specifically in Galipreneur, is in English because it's a lot easier to understand technicalities in your native language than it is to understand them
Right.
in a foreign language, even if you are very fluent.
Absolutely. And just so everybody knows, Spain has 17 autonomous regions. And so that is a lot of small differences, and some can be made, I don't want to say major, but fairly large differences as well. And that comes from everything from documentation of getting residency, some of those documents and things that you need to have, all the way up to business, to taxes, personal taxes, or like a wealth tax that some regions have, to when you buy a house, those taxes again can vary. So every autonomous region within Spain is a little bit different. And I guess the best way to describe it would be similar to states within the
Mhm.
US or provinces within Alberta. Um, but some of those differences can be substantial, and there's always little things. So when getting information, it really is important that you're finding out for that right region, because and it's great to go online, and it's great to go onto like Facebook and find stuff, but somebody says, well, I was told ABC, and somebody says, well, I did this or I did that, or I only needed whatever. It could be that they are in a different region of Spain. So, if you're in expats of Spain, great, general information, fine, but just to keep in mind that when we do get into those, whatever specific region that you're going to be moving to and living in, there are going to be some of those nuances that are different.
Absolutely. And even in terms of businesses, there are special subsidies that some regional governments offer that other regional governments don't.
That's important to know.
And the processes for those subsidies, even for individuals that are looking to buy a house, for instance, like in Galicia, if you're buying in a rural community and you want to, you buy a house that's kind of in shambles and you want to rebuild it, you might actually even need to go to the local city hall to figure out what kind of subsidies you may be eligible for from the city hall, besides any subsidies that you may be eligible for from, the regional community or from the provincial authority. So like there's a lot of there's a lot of different items to consider
Mm.
when you're moving somewhere, and particularly when you're starting an enterprise somewhere.
Right. And I mean, as a foreigner, we're just not going to know, because
Mhm.
we don't know what we don't know. And one thing that I learned, that's quite different too in North America, when you have your business, you can just use receipts that you get from the store or the shop, and you just regular type receipts. But in Spain, you need to have very specific, specialized receipts, for items that you're declaring, and you can't just have your regular receipts. And that can cost somebody a lot.
Yeah,
Thinking, great, I've started my business, so I have all these receipts, and they try to deduct all this stuff from the whole year. And then it comes time to do taxes, and they say, no, those aren't the proper receipts. So none of that counts.
yeah. So it's about helping people, and it can be, those kinds of things can be very overwhelming and very scary, right? So
Hmm.
that's kind of what our goal is to make things a little less scary, to feel like people are connected to community,
Yeah,
and that people are finding ways to become a part of the community as well.
right. Right. And I think that community is so important. It's something that, unfortunately, in a lot of places, yeah, it's been, I say, kind of falling apart.
Mhm.
or breaking down, where it's been more, I can do it, I'm independent, I'm strong, but really to become happy and successful. And I think we need to redefine the definition of success. I mean, success is happiness,
Yeah,
truly.
there you go.
Um,
I'm 100% with you, Sally. That's
if
it.
the way that I see it, if you wake up and you enjoy life, you're happy. I mean, minus the bumps in the road that we always have, that's success. We've seen it that money doesn't make people like happy and joyful and things like that. So when we have that happiness, we are successful. And it's working with that community, and that community helps us get there because they
Hmm.
help us integrate into where we're at. They help us learn new and different things. If it's business, they can do things that we don't like to do, and they love to
Exactly.
do it, which is
Outsource.
great.
Outs Yeah.
And
Exactly.
it really is important. And then and I think too, with moving abroad, the biggest thing that we have to ask, I mean, there's a lot, but I think one is why? Why are you wanting to move abroad? Like what is your goal? What is that happiness or success that you're looking for? And that's A, why you're moving abroad. And then the B part of that is, then why is this destination that you're choosing, or the ones that you're looking at, why is that destination the one that's going to bring you that happiness, and how is that going to look in that country, and then again making it into that region or city, town, rural area, whatever is the ideal for each person.
I completely agree. I think that one thing to be cognizant of with that process is to realize that in the end, regardless of where we are, happiness is an inside job. So like
Right.
we can go somewhere and expectations always fall short. Sometimes they surprise us, but they often fall short. So
Hmm.
it's about also being resilient and knowing that, we can be moving somewhere. Like people move to Galicia and they're like, oh, it rains so much. And I'm like, it's Galicia. Like that's one of the things that
Yeah.
it's known for. If it's, that might have been something that you could have that you may have thought you could handle and you realized that you couldn't handle it when you moved here. Or
Mhm.
it may have been something for me, but for me, I go back to like there are things we can control, there are things we can't control. We can't control the rain.
Right.
So
And
like,
knowing that it rains a lot, if you can't handle it, then don't move to places where it rains a lot. Like, I don't like winter and cold. I'm not
yeah,
moving to a place with winter and cold.
exactly. Or like if you don't speak Spanish and you don't speak Gallego and you're not willing to learn Spanish and Gallego, well, then you may find yourself isolated. You may find a group, a small group, a community of people that only speak English as well, but realize that basically you are hindering yourself from all the local beauty. When I say local beauty, I mean the beauty of the people and the culture and the way people live their friendships. Because you know this, Sally, like depending on where you are, people live their friendships different ways.
Right. Absolutely.
And people love on you different. Like,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it really is kind of looking at the why and the bigger picture, and part of, as what you said, it comes within, because it doesn't matter where we are, there's challenges.
Yeah.
There's definitely, like, that's what we call life. Challenges, bumps in the road. And people ask me sometimes, because I do travel around a lot, is, do you get lonely? And I say sometimes. And I do. And I say, you've lived in your home country, in your home city your whole life. Do you get lonely? And most times they say, oh, sometimes. I'm like, so it's the same. It's knowing your why, but the thing too is, if you're moving abroad and you need a change of life, you're just not happy, maybe you're not sure exactly what it is. Sometimes the problem is you, and you follow you everywhere you go. You can't escape you. And so you may need to work on you.
Exactly. And that goes back to what we were saying about like moving abroad is holding a mirror up to yourself in a bunch
Mm,
of different ways, right?
right.
And like if the common denominator, regardless of where you are, is your own unhappiness, then you are the common denominator.
Right.
Granted, there are places where like we feel more of our full selves. So for instance,
Hmm.
I always feel more, whether it's in Madrid, because I live in Madrid, whether it's in Vigo, I always feel more of my full self when I'm in Spain. Why? Because the culture is lends itself more to the kind of diffusive person that I am, right?
Mm. Hmm.
Like people are more affectionate. People are more you're out in the street with people, you talk to people, you say good morning, you say hello. Like that to me, that's part of who I am. So to see myself that reflected around me gives me joy.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's important, and that's part of knowing you and your why and picking the right place.
Absolutely.
So just to kind of deviate from that a little bit, because I'm sure it's something that people are wanting to know a little bit about as well, is the cost of living in Galicia compared to what you were spending in Texas.
Oh,
How is
much,
that different?
much
And I
cheaper.
know I know that, but
Groceries are
it,
crazy. I went to visit my grandmother last year, and you'd walk out of the grocery store with like four things, and it was $100. Here, I'll spend like what, €100, and I'll have groceries for a week and a half.
yeah,
I mean, the cost of living is I mean, even though the price of housing has gone up in Galicia, it's still nothing compared to the cost of housing in the United States. Health,
right.
even if you're on private health, if you decide to get private health insurance to supplement, you know, if you arrive as like an immigrant and or an expatriate and you the first couple of years you only have health insurance, private health insurance because you're required and you can't buy into the system yet. Like
Mhm.
if you it might cost you $1,000 a whole year, $1,300 a whole year, depending on your age. Like, whereas in the United States, $1,300 is what you spend on health insurance in
A
a
month.
month. If often your employer pays a partial portion of that.
Mm,
And this is health insurance with no copays at all. And yes, you may have to pay for your medicine out of pocket, but medicine that might cost me $80 in the United States costs me $5 here, €5 here.
mhm.
So in that sense, life is a lot more accessible. Granted, salaries are much lower.
Right.
And the reality is that work is quote unquote precarious. You know, people, it's not unusual for people to spend periods of their life unemployed in Spain. And with that, there is opportunity,
Right.
right? Because you can be unemployed and just be unemployed and like trying to find your job in your sector, or you can be unemployed and creating other things.
Mhm.
And I think that that is part of what foreigners and entrepreneurs bring to Spain and bring to Galicia is that kind of can-do mindset. It's the mindset that, well, I'll start something and being fearless in that sense.
Right.
Fearless but afraid. You know, like when you're like, I'm afraid,
Mm.
I don't know what I'm getting into, but I'm gonna do it anyway. That.
Yeah. Yeah, it's well, they say that truly the only difference between fear and excitement is your perceived outcome. When you're excited, you're like, "Oh, I'm excited. I can't wait to
Yeah.
whatever." We are excited. We're feeling good because we are expecting a positive outcome. When we're
Yeah.
fear, the body is the same way. The whole things are going on, but we are expecting and we're worried about or expecting a negative outcome. And so the only
Mhm.
they say the difference is just the expectation. And I mean just to try and do. And yeah, that cost. So I've been in Nashville and I was out and one glass of wine cost me 30 US dollars.
No.
And I was like, that's more than lunch for two. I mean, for me, maybe not quite. If it was a light week of groceries, that's a week of groceries on a light. a light
Mm,
week because
yeah,
sometimes you buy more
yeah,
meat or things that last longer, pastas and things that you don't need to buy every week.
yeah.
But yeah, and I thought this is absurd. And then just what we're seeing more in the news and online and stuff of the things that companies are getting away with putting in the food and the chemicals and the things that are banned and not allowed in Europe. And then to also, what I love about Spain and Europe in general is the walking. People are out there walking the bike paths, they're riding bikes, and you're outside, and it's part of that community where you walk for coffee, you sit down outside, you enjoy, you have coffee or lunch or whatever. You walk back to work, you walk to the grocery store, you just go for a walk with somebody. You
The
know, like,
lifestyle is healthier. It's a
yeah,
healthier lifestyle. It's less sedentary.
yeah. Yeah, it really is. And that's kind of no matter where you go in Europe in general is a it's just a healthier lifestyle. Yeah. So if people wanted to be part of your community, your group, because there's online stuff, and I know you're hosting some events online, and it
Mhm.
definitely is growing, where can they find the site?
So if they just go to www.livegalicia.com, they will be able to access our different Facebook communities, our groups through there. They'll also be able to get in touch with us directly if they need any assistance. So we don't do direct relocation. Because like I said, I told you before, I worked with immigrant and refugee affairs for a really long time, and I didn't want to get into the case management side, but we can refer them to providers within our network that could assist them.
Perfect. And of course, we're here to help. We have a huge network of everything from immigration to real estate, mortgage
Yeah.
broker, everything like that. And so they can connect with us for that. But I think for the specifics of if they're wanting to know about business and community and things like that in Galicia, and if they're considering that region, to absolutely check out your site and your Facebook groups and find out what it's like to be a part of that community. So Angela, I just want to say thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sally. I've had such a good time with you today. I really enjoyed talking. I feel like we're kindred spirits, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm grateful for you. Thank you.